Hi, and welcome to the joint podcast between tarstarkus.net and 40K. I'm Tars Tarkus from tarstarkus.net.
And I'm Todd Statman from Die Danger Die Die Kill, aka 40K.
The podcast is to give a general introduction and discussion of cult movie genres from around the world based on what we know, which we don't guarantee is accurate. This is part two of the Taiwanese giant monster film podcast. It was first proved so popular that the public demanded a sequel. We'll be focusing mainly on the annoying flying kid genre of Taiwanese monster films, and then finish up with the leftovers.
The annoying flying kid genre, that being a coinage of Tars himself. That's not from the textbooks. That's not from the literature. That's his originally. He has it trademarked, as a matter of fact.
Until we write the textbooks.
Exactly.
The annoying flying kid genre is basically a series of common elements in a bunch of Taiwanese children's films where a small child gets magical powers of kung fu, flies around, and usually has to avenge his parents being murdered or kidnapped or both, and at many points runs across giant monsters who do giant monster things, and then he slaughters them gruesomely.
Yeah, I've only seen one of these movies, but despite the fact that they're presented somewhat as being kids' films, the one I saw, which is called Dwarf Sorcerer, also known as Magic Kid, I think it's called, is actually really violent. It's really gory, and there's a part where the Magic Kid, and by the way, I guess in some of these the kids actually have some martial arts ability, or at least some acrobatic ability that can be exploited. But in Dwarf Sorcerer, you really just have a 5-year-old being slung around on a wire with a sword in his hand, and a bunch of extras sort of half-heartedly pretending to be killed by him. But there is a part in Dwarf Sorcerer where he burrows. One of his superpowers is that he can burrow underground, and at one point he burrows underground, comes right up underneath the bad guy, and you see his sword come up out of the ground and go right into the bad guy's crotch. That's the high point of the movie, actually. So, anyway, sorry that being stabbed in the crotch is not the theme of this podcast. It's giant monsters. So, back to you, Tars.
Tune in next week for more
Yes.
crotch stabbing. Dwarf Sorcerer features plenty of giant, crazy monsters. We have a goofy bird puppet who looks like Big Bird had sex with the monster from that 1950s The Flying Monster.
Oh, from the with the the flying claw, right?
Yes,
Or
yes,
the giant claw.
Yeah.
We don't know about American cult movies. We only know about, Thai movies with, that rip off the $6 Million Man, but we don't know. We've never even heard of Plan 9 from Outer Space. So.
There's also a husband and wife team of goofy-looking Bigfoot gorilla monsters who first are bad guys and then eventually help the young hero.
They have their own theme song, I hear.
Yes. And there's also an evil ape monster who has gas that comes out of his armpits. The other thing about Dwarf Sorcerer is if you liked it, you can see the exact same story in Flyer of Young Prodigal, which includes almost the exact same plot elements and the hero having the same name. Most likely because it's probably taken from the same Chinese folk story, which we don't know the name of and can't figure out. The hero even looks identical to that same actor who was in Dwarf Sorcerer, except this was made many years later, so unless he was all Emmanuel Lewis, and also gained incredible acrobatic skills in the meantime, to the point where he was given a special title on the opening credits, where they also misspelled child, but then it's not the same guy.
Did they spell child DWARF by
I believe
chance?
it was CHIRD, I think. So he churned.
Those were racist credits. Those credits were made by a racist Chinese person.
The common story involves the character's father being killed and brother being kidnapped by a bad guy, and the child being almost killed but saved by a sifu who trains the kid to enact revenge. where the kid is been shown his mother being menaced by the evil guy, and then the kid runs away to save his mom, and along the way slaughters everyone. In Fire of Young Prodigal, the things he slaughtered include a giant dinosaur that spits yellow goo, and several flying dragons that actually turn back and forth into people and fight each other at one point. There's also a fake alligator which turns into a guy, and a fake turtle which turns into a little person.
And then there's actually a much earlier movie that's also part of this genre, right? The Young Flying Hero. Have we talked about that one yet?
No, that's actually the probably the first one in this subgenre, and sometimes it was labeled as Return of the Magic Serpent, mostly because the monsters, which was a giant frog and a giant dinosaur, resembled the monsters from the Japanese film The Magic Serpent. This film was finally showed up about a year ago in the gray market, and I was much enthused when I got it, and then I watched it, and it was incredibly boring until the last 5 minutes when the flying kid flies inside of a giant frog, and then the frog then fights a giant lizard, and they both die. I'm not sure what was going on, but it was probably pretty dumb. The other notable thing about Young Flying Hero was the evil bad guy had a huge evil villain mustache, which was pretty rocking.
Which was sort of a kaiju in itself, I understand.
Probably the best of the annoying flying kid movies is Boy in a Magic Box, largely due to the fact that most of the monsters in Boy in a Magic Box are awesome. In this one, the kid's father finds a woman trapped behind some glass. She's supposed to be a wife of the Monkey King guy, and somehow the father seduces the woman and she gets pregnant, and then when she goes to heaven, Monkey King uses his Monkey King powers to look inside her stomach and see there's a baby there, and so he throws her in jail and throws the baby down to earth for the dad to raise.
This is the second time I've heard you describe this movie. I still don't understand why the Monkey King throws the woman in jail, other than that she's a woman. Which that might be it, actually. I guess that Monkey King. He's a trickster, though.
Yeah.
He doesn't need a reason.
After the father eventually remarries a woman who's not in jail and trapped behind glass, and they have another kid who somehow enrages the palace guards who want to kill the kid, but the older son saves his younger half-brother and is almost killed himself except for the last moment when a Sifu saves him and begins to train him in the martial arts for, I guess, revenge against the Monkey King or something. He also gives the kid a magic box, thus the title, where the kid can pull out magical items a la Felix the Cat. At which point the kid goes on a magical adventure where he flies around and meets lots of giant monsters. One monster is a giant tyrannosaur with a spike on his head. This tyrannosaur breathes very real fire out of its mouth. The tyrannosaur also uses weapons, actual hand combat weapons, in addition to its fire breath and horn when it fights a evil bearded triceratops. And after the Tyrannosaur defeats the evil bearded Triceratops, it and the flying kid go around a while, and at one point the Tyrannosaur grabs the kid and carries him around like in the front and then just throws him off somewhere. Later the kid has to fight a three-headed King Ghidorah looking monster, which is totally not King Ghidorah except for the fact it looks almost exactly like him.
Yeah. Yeah, when I saw your screen caps in your review of this, I just thought that they had edited some footage of King Ghidorah into the movie, but I guess not. It's at least they made their own for this movie, at least. Yeah.
The finest bootleggers in all of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the coolest monster in the film, which is a three-headed, six-armed lizard ape monster, which the boy fights in a sword fight. Which you would think having 6 arms and 3 heads would be an advantage, but you're wrong and you're facing an annoying flying kid who horribly murders the poor 3-headed, 6-armed lizard ape monster who is just trying to live in a world that wouldn't accept three-headed, six-armed lizard ape monsters.
That is annoying.
Yes. Some of these lesser seen monsters in there is a monkey bird man, and one of the Monkey King's pals is a guy who is a Triclops.
All right. And does that takes us out of the annoying children? Are we done with the annoying children, Tars?
Yes, except for the ones we'll be mentioning on other show.
Right, yeah, because you can never talk about the annoying flying children enough.
Yes.
Hopefully there are people making a new generation, making a whole new wave of annoying flying children movies as we speak. But they'll be filled with CGI, which will make them even more annoying than these movies.
Yes.
And now we're going to move on to the miscellaneae,
Mhm.
or the miscellaneousness of the movies that, not that fall through the cracks, but just don't fit into a ready-made subgenre so neatly, but that also include some giant-ass man-in-suit monsters.
Mhm.
Well, the first one, why don't we talk about War God here? A movie that neither of us has seen. Some people saw it on Taiwanese television 10 years ago, apparently. But,
Besides that, it hasn't been seen anywhere since it first came out in 1976. It features basically the god of war, Guan Gong, who grows to giant size and defends Taiwan against evil, giant, funky-looking aliens who decide to invade, and looks very Ultraman or similar production. And it looks really cool from all the photos we have.
Yeah, this is another one we know from seeing lobby cars that popped up on. Did these pop up on eBay as well, or?
I'm not sure. I think some of them are from newspaper or magazine
newspaper ads
clippings that someone scanned in.
And what was the name of the god? Guang. I mean, we want to make clear that even though we know how to spell child, and we may make fun of the way that Taiwanese people might choose to spell child in English, we cannot pronounce any of these Chinese names at all. So
it's Guan Gong, who is the god version of the General Guan Yu, who you might remember from the Legend of the Three Kingdoms epic. If you also see people who have Chinese idols in their house, he'll be the one with the red face and black hair, because he's the god of war.
I know that one.
He's usually gangsters worship him, and he's also used as protection for places. So now you know.
So he's badass, in other words. Yeah. And the aliens he fights are kind of cute, except they're giant.
Yeah.
They look kind of like little green men, except not little, and they're trouncing around in Hong Kong and smashing buildings and stuff.
Who knows? Maybe they came here to be all cute and peaceful, and the god of war is like, I don't think so. We're violent, and then he just horribly slaughters them to teach them how bad the human race is.
Yeah. And then and then they take their cure for cancer and go home with them.
Yep. Stupid aliens.
Yeah. Then another of these less easy to define movies is The Thrilling Sword, which both of us have actually seen. I love The Thrilling Sword. It's awesome. It's basically a fantasy wuxia retelling of the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but it's set in martial world China. It's got all. I mean, it basically tells the same story, but with a few weird twists. Like, for instance, Snow White's mother is impregnated by a comet, and when she gives birth, what comes out is this sort of pulsating, bloody potato that kills her mom in childbirth, horrifies her father. He, of course, takes it and throws it in a lake, where it travels downstream and is discovered by the seven dwarfs, who at first want to eat it, but then they discover there's a baby in it, and then the baby comes out. That, of course, ends up being Snow White. None of these things I think are in the Disney version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That maybe in the original text, maybe there's the bloody pulsating potato sort of afterbirth looking thing. But all that aside, a lot of the other elements are there. We have the evil witch who talks to her mirror and things like that. But also, we've got a great suitmation cyclops demon, and there's a nine-headed serpent that's pretty cool.
Hmm.
There's also other kinds of some other effects, like you've got all your basic cartoon lightning bolts coming out of people's hands, cartoon auras. There's a talking puppet chicken that's involved in some fart gags that happen
Hmm.
at one point. There's the handsome prince, as Tars pointed out to me, gets turned into a bear at one point, so he's walking around in this bear costume. And then later he gets hold of some kind of a magic crystal or something, I don't remember, and he turns into a warrior that looks like he should have been painted on the side of a 70s van. He looks like he came out of a Frank Frazetta calendar, basically.
Yes.
Am I getting all this, Tars? Is there anything else
Yeah.
about Thrilling Sword we need to document?
Well, the evil queen and her evil sorcerer boyfriend both worship the devil, so there's a giant demon
Yeah,
statue.
yeah, it looks like something you'd see in an old, like sort of Tarzan movie. Something
Yeah.
that the cannibals would worship or something.
Hmm. I can't, just for kids, haha, worship
Right,
the devil.
exactly. Yeah, all in good fun.
Yeah. Other films include Merciful Buddha, which features a ape-shaped rock that at one point turns into a giant gorilla who's above the village that the rock's over, decides he's out of there and runs away, causing the village to be horribly destroyed. The ape is then captured by two criminals who use a bottle to capture him in the bottle and then train him to turn into a bear and steal money from old ladies. And at one point, there's a horse with a human head. I don't remember why, but it
Oh
was.
yeah,
Yes.
I saw that picture of the horse with the human head. It was scary. It gave me nightmares.
Yes. Let's see, we also have Monkey War, which is another film involving the Monkey King. This is actually two stories from Journey to the West. One of which is the Cave of the Silken Web, which is where Monkey King meets the women who are spiders, and there's a giant spider that shoots flames. There's also in other parts of the story a giant dragon flying through the air. Well, there's a giant bat, and then that's in the same area where there's some guys who are flying around in costumes that look like they're straight out of He-Man.
But no annoying flying kids though.
No.
Okay, good.
Let's see. Phantom Magic Peach Blossom, which has a giant dragon and a giant bat.
Giant dragons being pretty much a staple of most of these movies we're talking about, and bats are also pretty common too, I think.
Neither of us have seen this film except for a few still photos. We also have Legend of Mother Goddess, which both of us have seen.
Yeah, that has and that one actually I was going to mention reuses the fire-breathing Tyrannosaurus with the horn on his nose from which one was that? Was that the no, it wasn't Flyer of oh, that was Boy in a Magic Box, right? That
Yeah.
had that. Yes, they reused that same costume. And there's also dragons, and there's a big dragon fight, which is also a common occurrence in these movies. Not in life, of course, but
Mhm.
in a movie like this, you will see dragons fighting so much that you will find yourself just saying, "Ho hum, oh nothing, dear, just a dragon fight. Go back to bed." Legend of Mother Goddess is a pretty good movie. It's the director. I just like painted myself into a corner. I'm going to try and say this name. Hao Chang is also the director of the Polly Shang Quan movie Zodiac Fighters, which is an amazing movie. Legend of Mother Goddess is not as good as Zodiac Fighters because it doesn't have Lo Li on a giant shark launching palanquin in it. But
Yes.
how many movies do?
Yeah.
Few movies can say that. But anyway, there's that.
Yeah.
What else do we have on the list, Tars?
I believe that's it for the ones we're going to get into in depth. We should also mention 12 Animals, but we'll go more into that during our Peach Boy podcast in the future.
Yes, that's something to look forward to.
And we'll also get into the Magic Sword of Watari, which is tangentially related to the Peach Boy films as well. So that seems to be it for now, but who knows what new wonders will be discovered and turn out to be incredibly boring.
Right. What will happen is we'll either spend years trying to find these movies so that when we do, we can tell you about how incredibly boring they are, or if these movies do exist, we will not watch them and tell you about them anyway based on things we read about them on internet forums or based on lobby cards that we saw on eBay. So this is why you need to keep tuning into this podcast again and again, because we give you the goods.
We save you 5 minutes on Google. We'll go for now, but stay tuned, and we'll soon discuss more sub-genres you didn't know existed, and give you 50 more films you need to track down.
All right. Thank you and good night.